Hello, everyone. If all of you could only see what is going on before I turn this camera on for these live shows. I hope everybody is doing well out there. Got a fantastic show planned for you tonight, and just something that is not on the agenda, but I'll talk about it at least a little bit, just because I received something in the mail today, although I can't go deep into it. I'll get into that before these 2 hours are completed. It has been absolutely some of the nicest weather you ever want to see here in the Tampa area, Clearwater Beach, Clearwater, St. Petersburg area of Florida over the past few days. Unfortunately, my disc golf play this weekend could not match the nice weather. It was bad. But it's just to continue to work on that. But as I always say when I get this live show started, I hope all of you will give this a thumbs up. If you are not yet a subscriber to at least the YouTube channel, please do so. If you are watching on the Facebook page, if you are not yet in the group, please request to be in the discussion group. Please like the page. Please share the Facebook page. I want to remind all of you that we also have an Instagram account where I post pictures of the missing people who are featured on Unfound. We also have a TikTok account where I post what we might call a preview video there, either every Wednesday or every Thursday morning, kind of setting everything up for the episode for that Friday. And the TikTok account's actually been doing pretty well. And, of course, the website, theunfoundpodcast.com. And then for tonight, the overlay for the video version of this show. If you ever want to reach me, the easiest way to do that is unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. I am the only one who gets those emails, in contrast to some of the other places where maybe myself and one or two of my assistants have access to accounts here and there. But for the Gmail, I am the only person who gets the mail. So unfoundpodcast@gmail.com if you've ever wanted to contact me about maybe some disappearances that you're interested in, that maybe we should take a look at. Maybe, something that's out there that I need to know about. Anything like that. Anything that's on your mind regarding disappearances, you can always contact me. If you're a person who is just getting into Unfound and, for the first time and you're working your way through all 300 plus episodes and you ever want to email me, maybe one of those very early episodes early on, something that you hear that catches your attention, the best way to catch my attention is emailing me at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. So give the thumbs up tonight, like, share the Facebook page, join the discussion group, get involved in Instagram, TikTok, the website, theunfoundpodcast.com. We are everywhere. So let's see who is in here on this Monday night. And I will move on to some other things. Everything, what's going on? Charlie, good to see you. Valerie. Hazel says, I got the timer. I thought you guys, we did wind back the clocks an hour, Hazel. We just did that yesterday morning. And so maybe you're a little misunderstood about what we're doing over here in the United States, which is not hard to understand. Hello, Karen, Melody, and Lisa. Marty is in on time. Everybody note that. Lisa, I missed the beginning of the live. I'm watching a Little House on the Prairie episode, and there is a cliffhanger. You know those are in reruns now, Lisa. If you miss it now, it will play probably somewhere down the road, not too long from now. Hello, Jasmine, Mark. Finally got around to subscribing. I thought I was no longer a guest. Not. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. And yeah, Lisa, Barbara, what's going on? Hazel again. And Patty and Kathy and Suzanne, Assistant Carrie, Assistant Cherie, Light, would say, hey, thank you. You got Maddie tonight, my most studied case. Madison, yeah, I want to talk. I am going to talk about that. It's on the agenda. It's certainly, we're going to cover it. And it's going to, Light, I don't really have any new information, but I just want to maybe give an assessment. It's been like 6 months since her remains were found. Just going to talk a little bit about why it could be that really nothing has come out since then. Sheree says, I'm not on StreamYard tonight. Forgot the laptop at work. Okay, Sheree. Thank you for letting me know. And Twinkle, Twinkle, Twinkle. Everybody's saying hi to each other. Isn't that nice? All right. Let's move into some other things. Yeah, the disc golf was not good this week. The first round was pretty good. Second and third rounds, wow. I know how to mess up some good play. Going well, and then it just goes bad so quickly. And it was windy, but it was something that I was prepared for and just didn't. I thought I handled the wind actually pretty well. There was other things in my game that not good. I just can count back, and they aren't stressful mistakes being made for really no reason. It really reminded me a lot of when I played over in Orlando, where I was throwing pretty decently off the tee, and then I would find other ways to mess up a basket. I would be like, my first throw would be like 100 feet from the basket, and for there, it would take me like 4 throws to get in the basket. I mean, it's really, really bad. Had a few items like that. Not sure. Maybe it's just a concentration. It's not fear or anything. Maybe it's just a concentration thing. And I don't know. But it's not the yips. It's not as bad as used to be, some years ago where I was just all over the place. Nothing like that at all. Just little mistakes here and there. And over the course of 18 baskets, 19 baskets, or like last week in 25 baskets, it adds up. And it's making mistakes under what should be non-stressful situations. It seems I'm handling like the difficult shots pretty well. It's the easy shots that I'm messing up. Maybe I'm just taking them for granted or something. But I've kind of just written this entire year off. This has not been a very good year for my disc golf career. Last year was pretty good. This year, not good. So we'll just try to do better come 2024. And I've put a little plan together on what I need to do to make that happen. Everything asks, do you get to practice a lot at your disc golf? Everything not as much as I would like. But I would certainly practice could be one of the reasons that I have these problems with some easy shots. Very well could be. I try to get out a couple days a week, but that depends on a lot of things. Depends on, of course, Unfound always comes first. And if I have an episode to write or record, or I'm trying to track some people down, that always takes precedent over everything else. And then, it just depends on a lot of different things. Do I think that a lot of guys that I play with play more during the week than I do? I think they do. And mainly, and you may say, well, that's kind of weird, Ed. You run your own business, quote unquote. Got the little bunny ears up here for anybody can see me. And so you should be able to make your own hours and everything else. So you should be able to block out time where you can almost, practice at least for an hour, every day, just going up here to Sandkey Park. That's true. But on the other hand, most of these other guys that I play with, they have jobs that, if they have jobs, that's a whole other story. But, they're amateurs like I am, and, they're all between their 20s and their 50s. So most of them are in the working class of the United States. But most of them probably have jobs where they are required to be there from this time to that time, and then everything else is their time. That's not me. And in fact, as I've told you, Unfound for me is a 24/7 pursuit. I've done interviews at 2 a.m. in the morning. It's not unusual for me to be up at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night working on the podcast. And of course, there are things that go on. For example, Sunday on the Think Tank, of course, Monday nights with the live show. I got to get my writing in for the blog. There's a lot of things that are required that must get done. And so, and it's also one of the reasons that since I started Unfound over 7 years ago, that I've never really had what you might call a vacation, where I've put all of the podcast stuff to the side for a week or 2 weeks and done this or done that. That's never happened. And I anticipate it will never happen. And in fact, even when my mother died, coming up on 5 years now, I just don't know where the time goes. But even then, even though a couple episodes did not come up for those couple Fridays around my mother's death, I was still working on the podcast, planning for when I would get back to it. So it's just a little, I guess perceptually, it would seem like I would have more time to practice than anybody. But being that I live by myself and I have my own job and I make my own hours, it's actually the opposite. And another thing probably is that as much as I play in the club once in a while in doubles, for me, I prefer just going out and playing by myself for the most part. So there's that. I think a lot of guys who do play a lot, who do practice a lot, they really rely on kind of that camaraderie between guys and going out. And after they play, maybe they go out for a beer and all those things. I am not that type of guy. I've never been that type of guy. It's just not it's not just not playing disc golf thing. It's been an Ed Densel thing for pretty much ever. So there's that. So a lot of guys are motivated to get out because they're going to go see their buddies and they're going to do this and they're going to do that. I'm not really like that. I've always been a little bit of a lone wolf, even though I have some guy friends who have, my best friends of all time. But really, I really, for a lot of my life, just been a little bit of a lone wolf, to be honest. And the truth is, I really much prefer, I enjoy hanging out with my brother Brian. That's probably an exception. And my brother Michael too. But really, when it comes to me, I'd rather much hang out with women than men. And I'm a straight guy. I know that sounds a little weird. That's just the way I am. And as a straight guy, maybe that makes all the sense in the world. But, a lot of guys need their testosterone time with other guys. I do not. So when it comes to practicing, I would certainly like to practice more. And maybe I need to think more about that, everything as we go into 2024. Twinkle says, to put a positive spin on your disc golf problems, you have really mellowed and deal with it better. Yeah, Twinkle, you probably are onto something there. That don't get me wrong, it still eats me up. Don't get me wrong, but this is not the same as like 3 or 4 years ago, where I had these great fears and things out, afraid where the disc was going to go and all these things. It's nothing like that. It's although certainly everybody gets nervous out in the course, and the disc don't. We're all a bunch of hackers out there, and we, sometimes we don't know where the disc is going to go. And I saw a lot of bad throws by a lot of other players this week, and I'm not alone. But it's nothing like that. I'm just in a little bit of a trough right now, and really what it really exacerbates it, Twinkle, is I hate losing. That's what makes it bad. But the other stuff, I've learned to kind of live with it and put it off to the side. I still beat myself up as well as anybody, but I realize like what went on this weekend is all fixable. It's not like I have to go see my sports psychologist again or anything. It's really not as complicated as it was like 5 years ago. Marty, we'll only see a few more months left till next year, maybe 24. I'm hoping it will be. I'm hoping 2024 is better for everybody. Thank you, everything. I appreciate. Twinkle says, I worked for myself for 23 years. If you don't get the work done, there's no one else to do it. True, Twinkle. Thanks, Marty. I appreciate that. Hey, help find our missing son, Brandon Barron. Hello. How are you doing tonight? Good to see you. I'm taking for granted that's one of Brandon's parents who's in the chat. Maybe everybody wants to say hi. Marty, I don't work for myself, but I do work by myself, so I get it, Twinkle. If the job doesn't get done, no one else to blame. That's right. So the disc golf, actually I have this weekend off, and then the next tournament would just be a one-rounder over at Taylor. It's an anniversary type of thing. It's still a PDGA rated round, but that'll be over at Taylor, not this weekend, but next weekend. And you should know, this past weekend, the second round was horrible. The first round on Saturday actually was pretty good. And then, I don't know, second round. And then Sunday had a chance, even though it was a very, very difficult course at that point, had a chance to really do decently. And I kind of blew what I would say would be, let's see, 1, 2, I blew out of 18 baskets. I blew 3 of them where I should have had easy pars, and I took double bogeys. And then there was one where it was a par 5. I should have easily taken a 5. So that I took 4 double bogeys in that last round, and none of them should have happened at all. At all. So that's like 8 strokes. And had I shot 8 strokes better, I would have been really, really, really pleased. So it's not like I'm stinking the whole round. I'm stinking for just short amounts of time to the point where it's killing my score. Got to work on it. Shelly, I was on the wrong page. Hello, Shelly. There you go. Brandon's mother. Hello, Shelly. Good to see you. That's fine. My friend's niece went missing and posted on the Unfound discussion page. She was just found Tampa area. River Lawson, thank you for having a place for someone to get the word out. Wow, Lisa, right here in the Tampa area. Really? Okay. I'm not sure I saw that post in the discussion group or not, Lisa. Probably I did. But okay, I'm glad she was just found, and I have to ask Lisa, she was found alive, I'm hoping, of course. So maybe you want to let us know on that. So that's disc golf. And I have 3 weekends that I'm playing before the end of the year. And remember, I am going to be going up to Pennsylvania in December. So I won't be playing anything in December or middle to end of December. And then we're into 2024 and all starts up again. And I've already signed up for a couple tournaments for 2024. So I'm not going anywhere. I just have some things to work on. Yeah, Lisa says she's fine. Okay, very good, Lisa. All right, moving on. Of course, we turned our clocks back yesterday, and it's so weird that changing the clocks by an hour can make things feel so much different, right? That it's not like we're turning the clocks back 3 hours or something. We're only turning it back for an hour, 60 minutes, not long. The half the time, half the length of your average movie. But there's something about just turning the clocks back for an hour that makes it feel like we've turned the clocks back 3 or 4 hours. I don't know what that is. I don't know why that is. Of course, I've made the joke as much as anybody that you turn the clock back an hour and, it's 6 o'clock in the evening, but it feels like 11 o'clock. I don't get it. I don't get it. Twinkle says, I wish they would discontinue daylight savings time. Well, remember, as somebody pointed out to me, Twinkle, actually what we're on now is regular time. See, I think most people are a fan of the way the time is in the United States between like March and this past weekend, where it stays lighter, it stays daytime later into the evening. I think that's what more people like. I know that's what I like. This, it getting dark at 5 o'clock or whatever, at least that's what happens here in Florida. Not sure how many people are a fan of that. So we just have to remember something. Daylight savings time is what we're on during the summer, at least in the northern hemisphere in the United States. It's this time of year that what we call just regular time, and regular time stinks. I think it does. We just have to live with it. Because for me, I like to get out, and when I do practice, I like to get out in the evening, like at around 7 o'clock. Well, I can't do that now. By that time, it's been dark for 2 hours here in Florida. So everything messes with our body clock, I think. It must, everything, way more than we would ever think. So it's so weird. And I even made the joke as I was going to play disc golf. It must have been on Sunday morning, that as I was driving over there, it was like 7:38 a.m. yesterday morning. And I typed out, it's 7:30 a.m. and the sun's already going down. Something like that. It's so weird. This whole body clock circadian rhythm thing, it's actually real. You wouldn't think it would be, but it is actually real. And they talk about that if you, read anything about people who do work odd hours. Like pilots, of course, can get into working odd hours. Of course, people who work jobs that are mainly done a lot of road construction gets done at night. A lot of police officers work at night. A lot of course, 7-Eleven stores that are open 24/7, they work at night, and it starts talking about the circadian rhythm and all of that. It sounds like it's all hokey kind of stuff. It's actually real. And I know I experienced that when I worked for 7-Eleven almost 25 years ago now, that I had to work some night shifts, and boy, is it weird. It really is. Valor Ed, what are you doing for Thanksgiving and Christmas? Will you see family? Thanksgiving, I will be in Pennsylvania for Christmas, Valerie. I'm going to be up there before December 15th because I'm going to my sister's 50th wedding anniversary celebration. And then I'll stay through Christmas, and I will come back to Florida sometime between Christmas and New Year's. I really don't know if my dad's going to be coming down this year or not. I'm not going to drive him down, and he's not going to drive down, I think, anymore, and he doesn't like to fly. So I don't know what's going to happen there. But my plan is to be back here before New Year's. As far as Thanksgiving, I will be here, Valerie. Whether I do anything will depend on if my brother and his wife are doing anything. I really don't know. If not, I'll probably just make chicken wings for myself. Twinkle, I've had healthcare workers ask me what time it is without me looking at the clock. I've been within 15 minutes each time. That's crazy. Shri says it's like a cruel joke. I guess the turning the clocks. Yes, it's a cruel joke at all our expense. Yes. It's really weird. So that's my take. You move the clock an hour and, it seems weird. Whereas my perception is when we go the other way, when we move the clocks forward, it still feels a little weird, but certainly not as weird as turning the clocks back. I don't know why. So there you go. Those are some intro items for tonight. I want to remind all of you, please, if any of you have any questions, some of the questions people have already asked me questions. Any other questions you'd like to ask me during the show tonight, please type it right there in the chat, and I will get to your question as long as it's PG rated and not too personal. Also, if you'd like to support what we do here at Unfound, of course, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. We also have PayPal, paypal.me/Unfound Podcast. Or for anybody who is watching on YouTube tonight, just hit the little square with the $ in the middle, and you can contribute monetarily to Unfound right there if you would like. Mark says, every room in my house is a different time zone right now. Guess I should finish up getting them all changed. That was like an episode. It's been a couple different episodes of Star Trek like that, Mark. I think Star Trek Voyager had an episode like that, maybe in the 7th season, where Chakotay is going through all these different time frames. I remember that. I think moving the time forward in the spring feels worse, losing the hour of sleep. All right. Charlie going the opposite direction, saying turning it forward is worse. Huh. Maybe it doesn't feel so bad for me, Charlie, because I actually like the clocks going to the other system. So maybe that's what it is for me. Shri, almost 20 of you haven't hit that button. Thank you, Shri, for keeping tabs on the number. Lisa, what is my favorite color, Lisa? Of course, people who know me well will tell you that I dress in a lot of black. It's like I'm some emo teenager. When I go play trivia, I usually wear black concert shirts. I have so many of them now. But other than black, and that maybe goes to my rock and roll, heavy metal stuff. When I play disc golf, I usually wear a lot of black. But if it's not black, weirdly enough, it's like the Unfound colors, black and red. I would not get a car in red because I think that, I don't know, it seems a little too in your face or whatever. But the disc golf bag that I have is black and red. The disc golf cart that I use is black and red. Most of the colors that I wear when I go out and play disc golf, at least for tournaments, is other than black is red. So I guess other than black is black a color. I guess my favorite color is red, even though I can say there are many things that I would not want to own in red. I really prefer cars in white. I've been told that like greens look really good on me, like for my features or my eyes or whatever else, but I don't know. But I guess the colors that I choose to wear when I go play disc golf, at least for PDGA tournaments, it's black and red. So I guess that's my answer, Lisa. Mark says, I would rather be in Central Time. So that caused us to roll back one more hour. Hit the thumbs up. Yeah, emo Ed Marty. Yeah, I thought everybody would enjoy that. Yeah. And in kindergarten, my daughter's teacher asked if any kids' parents had to wear uniforms. And my daughter said, my mom has to wear black. I work from home in my PJs. Good for you, Lisa. Love it. And Lisa says her favorite color is blue. You know, Lisa, I used to think that my favorite color was blue. I used to really believe that. But then I start looking at like the clothes that I have. I've only had one car in the color blue. I've actually had a car in color red. You know, I know blue is supposed to be like the color for guys and everything, but I guess it's red. Who would have thunk it? You know, if it's Cherie, teamwork makes the throw go run. Yes. Okay. All right. Let's move on to, and anybody has any other questions, and thank you for the contribution, Lisa, through Super Chat. Anybody else wants to do that to make sure that I see their question, you can Super Chat it by hitting the button, the square with the $sign, but you can only do that if you are on YouTube, unfortunately. All right, moving on. I will start what I usually do for Unfound Stuff, and that would be the Kenny Weaver poll. And the question was very simple. Do you believe that all three guys, Wesley, Bruce, and Roger, know what happened to Kenny? In the discussion group, I think this might be for the first time ever, at least the last time I looked at the poll, it was 50-50. 50% of the people in the discussion group said yes, the three guys know what happened, and 50% of the responders said no, they don't know what happened. I guess that it leaves open to the idea that maybe two or one of them does. But so went 50-50. And in the think tank, and if you'd like to be part of the think tank, that is patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. That I conduct that think tank every Sunday evening. It is the only get together of its kind where people get together in a very private setting and analyze and discuss a disappearance, in which we throw around a lot of different ideas and theories. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. If that sounds like something that is that you think you might like, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. Sign up at the $12 a month level or above. And of course, you get a lot of other stuff with it as well. And even there at Twinkle, you got Twinkle there saying how great the think tank is. So in the think tank, it was like the same. Most people did not think that all three guys know what happened to Kenny. And I also, my blog that I write, that I talk about at the end of every episode, I came to the conclusion that I don't believe that all three of them know either. I could be convinced, though, at least one of them knows. And I think the best choice probably is Roger, given that he was supposed to be Kenny's roommate and just the way he's acted over the past 20-some years. That would probably be my pick. If I only had to pick one, that would probably be the guy. But I also, like half of the think tank, or most of the think tank, half of the discussion group, do not think that all three guys know. Now, you should also know that, and where, Marty, you were not in the think tank last night, were you? Or were you not in the think tank last night, Marty? In the blog this week, I did go off on police a little bit. And I know it's very easy. We have, I know this is totally cliche, so I hate it, but, we have a very polarized atmosphere, at least in the United States, on so many topics these days, not just concerning politics, but sports and everything else. And it's very easy when somebody starts complaining about the police to put them in the category of that group out there that is, defund the police and the police are racists. And, you start sounding like lyrics from a Rage Against the Machine song. And on the other hand, there's the idea if you speak well of the police, then you're on that side that thinks police can never do anything wrong and they're on a pedestal and everything else. And I will have you know, I'm not in either camp, if that's possible. If I'm allowed to be there, I am somewhere in between all of that. As I like to say, I try to be very realistic about police by always trying to remember that these are humans doing this job, not robots, not androids, not computers being programmed or anything else. But this week kind of did go off on law enforcement in general because we have to find a reason, or maybe reasons plural, that we get so many stories about police trying to evade their responsibility on disappearances. And it's just not from one state in the country. It's not from just one area of the country. It's not just in the urban areas of the United States, the big cities. It's just not in these small communities where they only have 2 or 3 police officers in the entire department. It is everywhere. We hear these stories from one coast to the other coast. And I think if I really were to think about some of these disappearances, for example, that we've covered in Canada, maybe some jurisdictional issues have popped up in some of those disappearances as well. So this is just not an American thing. It could be, it's at least a Western culture thing. Why is that? And I spend 2,000 some words trying to analyze that reason. What is that right there? Okay. I spend almost the entire 3,000 words of the blog trying to explain that, but it has to start with what is going on with policing today. Why is it that this is happening? And I think that what we see, at least on Unfound, and what we hear from guests about jurisdictional issues and everything, I think that this is just it's just a symptom of I think a larger disease. And this is just not a disease all on its own. It's like if you have the flu, then you have a fever. I think that, the fever is not the disease. There's something going on with your body. You have a virus, bacteria, whatever else. And the reason your body raises its temperature so as to kill that. That's how the body works. That's why you get 102, 103 degree temperature in an effort to destroy that whatever's in you. The fever is not the disease. The bacteria, the virus is the disease. And the way I look at these jurisdictional issues is I see them as the fever. They are not the disease. They are a sign that something else is going on. And so I get into that in the blog this week. And it's probably, if you have a chance to read it, and you can read it just by going to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. And all you have to do to read the blog is sign up for the $2 a month level. That's it. $2 a month. And you'll get me writing at least 4 times a month there. And you also, if you're signing up at the level, you also get the episodes early. But if you go there, you're going to read one of the starkest, I would say hard-hitting, objective analysis of what I think is going on in law enforcement and why things seem to have changed over the years. So that's once again the Patreon blog this week. And yes, I eventually do get around to talking about Kenny's disappearance, but let's just all admit there's not a ton of facts to analyze here. In fact, I would say that Kenny's disappearance is one of the ones where you have the fewest facts of all. I have to think about, is it number 1? Is it number 7? Is it number 10? I'm not sure, but we've covered some disappearances where there weren't a lot of facts, and Kenny certainly goes in that category. So then because of that, it's really hard to make an assertion as to actually what happened. But I did my best with what we were given. So there you go. That was the Weaver poll for this week. Discussion group 50-50 on whether the 3 guys know or not. Think tank, very much in the direction of not all 3 guys know. I also believe that not all 3 of those guys know what happened to Kenny, and it very well may be that none of them do. I happen to believe at least one of them does, and I think that my choice would be Roger. But that's me. All right, let's move on to let's get right into this. And I'm not going to read this article, because this article is a little dated now, because Charlie Adelson's trial came to an end today. And without saying too much, Assistant Cherie, moderator of the live show every Monday night for a long time now, if I can say, Cherie, she was a little worried that the jury just might buy in a little too much to what Charlie was selling. Now, I will admit I did not watch any of it. I understand that it was live on Court TV. I've, of course, read some articles. I certainly know a lot about Dan Markel's murder. I think I told you maybe a few weeks ago when all these trials got started again, that back when Dan got murdered in 2014, of course, that was 2 years before Unfound got started, I was reading everything you could read, and there were pictures out there, and on Web Sleuths, everywhere else. I was really into this. How can a law professor just get shot in his driveway in a fairly nice part of Tallahassee? How can this happen? And then eventually pictures came out of this. What was it? A Prius that was driving away from the scene, and you find out that he was divorced and all of these things. And it eventually took a couple years before they charged anybody with anything. Well, Charlie Adelson, who is Dan Markel's ex-wife's brother, and I think a lot of you, of course, know this trial and everything by now, was found guilty today, and it really didn't even take that long. I think it was 3 hours in a trial that it wasn't a long trial. My perception, it was about as long as both of Steve Pankey's trials, right? And theirs maybe a little shorter. And Charlie did get up on the stand, and the defense that he tried to make was that he kind of suspected that these people did this, and he was being extorted, and he knew that they did it, but he couldn't say anything because he was afraid for himself and his family. And it was one of these things where, these other people who've already been convicted knew that the Adelsons wanted Charlie's sister to be able to move back down to the Miami area with their kids. And so these people went about killing Dan. So, and then they said, unless you do this, you do that, we get caught, we're going to put the blame on you because you wanted this done. And so they killed Dan. I mean, Charlie's defense was they killed Dan so these people could blackmail the Adelson family, which of course is crazy. I guess you got to give it a shot, right? And it only took 3 hours. And here is what Cherie is saying here. Hold on a second. I was a bit surprised how quick. All right, so Hazel was surprised. Cherie, I was a little worried because people were starting to believe his defense. Thankfully, not people on the jury. Cherie, how did you get, where were you seeing that the people were maybe believing him? With this on Web Sleuths, or Is there some forum that you were going to where people were talking about this? If so, I'd certainly like to talk about that a little bit. Lisa, I also followed Dan Markel case really closely. So sad. I'm glad they found Charlie guilty. Twinkle, seems to me that in spite of all the courtroom antics these days, the jurors are not buying it. Hazel, that's if all jury members didn't read up anywhere, anytime. Yeah, sure, he had to try. But that's what he tried, and it was not successful. I really don't know. Some of you may. I really don't know if he was offered some sort of deal before this. You know, if you plead guilty, then we'll only give you this amount of time or whatever. I really don't know. But given that they did go to trial, and now that he was found guilty, there's really nothing from keeping the judge, you know, from giving him the maximum. And I don't, could the death penalty? I mean, because this is, you know, this is a particularly heinous crime. To go about getting all these people together, planning to kill somebody who was in your family at one point. You know, your sister's ex-husband, and doing this, knowing how much this is going to affect their children and all of this. This is a particularly heinous crime, just no different than what happened up there in Jacksonville with that Microsoft executive with the ex-wife getting, is kind of the same type of situation there. This is a no death. Shree's saying no death penalty because I have to remind all of you, we do kill people here in Florida. You know, of course, there are many states who do not execute people, criminals. And we have states that have the death penalty still on the table. It's still available, but they never use it anymore. Well, here in Florida, we still kill people. We still execute people. And so, but now Shree's saying, Shree says, I watched on a YouTube channel that's been covering it for years. Okay, Shree. Shree says, automatic life, no death penalty. He will get life without parole. Should be, everything says should be the death penalty. Hazel and Tallahassee Democrat live play of the trial on YouTube. Some people thought the defense had caused enough doubt for a hung jury, right? I just, I guess what I would say, and I have it here in my notes, that if a jury could find Steve Pankey guilty, then surely they could find Charlie Adelson guilty. Of course, there's much more proof that Charlie Adelson was involved in the murder of Dan Markel than Steve Pankey was in the murder of Janelle Matthews. That doesn't mean that Steve didn't do it. But if you're going to find Steve Pankey guilty, then surely Charlie Adelson is easily guilty. But and it was Cherie who actually texted me earlier today to tell me what the results of the trial was, that he was found guilty. And as I texted back to her, I said, I said something about, her faith in juries is restored, but I also said dentists, ... And Cherie, I know and I'm not an anti-dentite. The joke that goes way back to the Seinfeld days. You're an anti-dentite. Kramer accusing Jerry of hating all dentists, so he's an anti-dentite. The weird thing for me is that we have to remember Charlie Adelson was a dentist. Very educated guy. But what I will also tell you is that the dentists who I've known in my life all been kind of weird. Got to admit it. Even the dentist who I have here locally, although he did a fantastic job on my teeth, not cheap, by the way. He was a guy that when working on me could kind of start going off on tangents and things, and got along with him just fine, but it just seemed to me to be odd conversation given that he really doesn't know me that well. I'm just a paying customer. Maybe he looked me up and saw that I did this podcast. I don't know. But it just seemed weird to me that he would just kind of start throwing all this stuff out I'm sure of all of his assistants and dental assistants and hygienists or whoever else all know what he's like. But to just start saying some of these things in front of essentially a stranger, a little weird. Same way in Las Vegas. Same way when I lived in Pennsylvania. And even although I did not know this guy, if you can follow this, my biological mother or father's wife, my biological parents got divorced after I was born in 1970, but he got married again. And he married a woman who had a daughter who was married to a dentist. And although I never met this guy, I have been told by both my brothers and my sister that this guy was a complete kook too. Kind of a, conspiracy theorist and type of guy who would gladly bring up anything in any sort of company and everything. He was a dentist too. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. So maybe Charlie Adelson being a dentist and coming up with this conspiracy to kill his sister's ex-husband, maybe then is not so crazy. Given that, I don't, just like I said, it just seems to me that, whereas I've known plenty of doctors and, I've had several doctors. I've had doctors in Pennsylvania, doctors in Las Vegas, doctors. I have a great different doctors here in Florida. They're not like that at all. Only the dentists. I don't know why. What's everybody saying? Let's see. That was all Squatch. Lisa said, because death penalty in Florida, I remember hearing that's why Ted Bundy murdered in Florida. Lisa says, my dad was an awesome dentist. I'm sure he was, Lisa. Just telling you my experience. I'm glad. No complaint about the work of these dentists. You are not a raging anti-dentite. Thank you, Twinkle. They have the untouchable persona. I really, maybe Sheree. Hazel, I completely agree with that. But people who have followed it for a long time have learned so much to know he was guilty. Probably. I wonder how Steve was holding up in prison. I'm going to get to that, Valerie. Hazel, if jurors were all completely honest and 100% knew nothing about Dan's murder, I think there may have been some doubt. All right, so Hazel's saying there might have been jurors who maybe just came to their conclusions well before the trial ever started, and in the jury selection process, maybe they were not weeded out. I guess it's possible. Everything says it's all the gas those dentists take in. Okay, everything. Twinkle, I read the dentists have very high suicide rates. Maybe, Twinkle. That could be. The dentist thing, I swear my dad was a great guy. Lisa, I'm not saying you're lying. I'm sure he was. Mark, I just like to find a dentist with a decent command of the English language. Oh, no, we're not going to get into that, Mark. We're not doing that here. I will have, all of my dentists, I guess we might say we're all, what should I say? Western European heritage, just the way it's worked out. I don't know. But we want to stay away from that stuff, Mark. All right, please. So Charlie Adelson going to jail, rest of his life without parole. And I think that's fitting. Now, of course, Twinkle, who messaged me before the show started tonight, was stating, is it possible that some of these other Adelsons are going to get charged too? Could we even get to the point where Dan's ex-wife gets charged? Now, she was up on the stand. She, of course, said that she didn't know anything about it. And the point I continue to make is that here she was. She wanted to move with her children back to Miami from the Panhandle of Florida. Like, what is that drive? 7 hours more than that. Like, 10-hour drive from the Panhandle down to Miami. And Dan wouldn't let her. Then just this, I guess, a gift for her was put right in her lap where Dan gets murdered. And she went about changing the kid's last name and all these things, never looked back. Never seemingly thought for 1 second that, never went to the police and said, you know what? I just want you to know what was going on here, that I wanted to move back. My ex-husband, Dan, who was murdered, was not going to let me due to the divorce agreement that we have. And yes, I was mad at him and everything else, but I want you to know that I didn't have anything to do with his murder. She didn't do anything like that. I'm inclined to believe that she knew that they did it. I'm not going to go so far as at this point to say that she knew beforehand that they were going to do it. But once the murder happened and she found out how it happened in his garage, like guys waiting for him to come home, and there was nothing stolen. Nobody broke into the house. His car wasn't taken. It was just shot through the driver's side window. She had to know what happened. She had to. She didn't say anything. So I think for some people that could then make them believe that maybe she did have an inkling beforehand. Sure, Donna will be the next one. Wendy has been set with a plausible deniability by her family. And for anybody that doesn't know, Donna is Charlie's mother and Wendy's mother. And it does seem, things I've read about the Adelson family, that Donna is the boss. And she maybe seemed to be the one of everybody who was so ticked off about Dan and the divorce agreement and everything else. Certainly Wendy was mad about it. But what people have said who knew the situation very well back at the time in 2014, it was really, really Wendy's mother who really, really was just in a blind rage about all of it. Wendy drove to the crime scene that day. Cherie agrees with me. Thank you, Cherie. So that is, and of course, if Donna is charged, we'll continue to talk about all of this. I think, you know, how does this relate to disappearances? It relates in the way that people will do a lot of crazy things, a lot of horrible things for family. When we start thinking about alibis of disappearances where people have been given alibis by other family members, and of course that even happened with Janelle Matthews, with Norris Drake's mother and sister saying, oh yeah, Norris was home all night until after this had already happened. You can't believe that. There has to be more than just their word or whatever else for anybody to believe that. Family runs deep. Now, I will tell you that's not necessarily how I look at family. And I love my father. I love my, and my nephew Charlie's in here. Great guy. I always enjoy seeing him. I love my sister, and her husband and my brother Michael, brother Brian, and their spouses, and everything else. But I'm here to tell all of them, I'm not taking part in a murder. I'm not taking part in a murder plot with you. All right. In fact, if you even bring it up to me, I'm going to the police. And why? Because I'm too good looking to go to jail. All right. I'm going to keep saying it over and over and over. Certainly, there are a lot of people who've ticked me off in my life. And maybe once in a while, I think, it'd be nice that that person wasn't here anymore. But I'm always like, you know what? I'm too good looking to go to jail. Can't do that. So there's that. Twinkle, Wendy's mom was the impetus for all this. Okay, Twinkle. I think a lot of people think that way. Certainly. All right, so that is the trial of Charlie Adelson. And maybe he can continue to pursue his dental career in prison, maybe working on inmates' teeth or something like that. Everything true, Ed. No jail for you. We need you. Thank you, everything. I really appreciate that. Lisa, you are way too good looking to go to jail. Well, I'm glad at least one person agrees with me, Lisa. You don't have to say that, but that's very kind. You are too good looking to be locked up, young Aussie. Yes. Okay. All right. Let's move on to this. Being that I've mentioned Steve Pankey already tonight, somebody already asked me how, I already said something about, how Steve is doing in jail. And I did say to you that I had something for tonight that just came in the mail today. Can all of you read that? It's kind of blurry. I don't know if it's going to come out or not. But I got my third letter from Steve Pankey today. And you should know that I originally wrote him in July. He wrote back. I wrote him a second letter in August. And he wrote back. And then it took me a while to write him a third time because there were a few things that I wanted to look into before I wrote him. Well, I wrote him and I mailed it maybe a couple weeks ago. There certainly maybe middle October. And here is letter number 3. And you should know that it is, I'm not going to show you the writing. It is 3 pages. So this is the longest letter he's written me yet. I have not read it yet. I'm not going to read it. I know all of you are like, Ed, read it. Not going to do that. Maybe I'll tell you about it next week, but I've not read it yet. But I will tell you that every time I've gotten one of his letters, I go right to the last page because I'm like, because you should know, the letters that I've written to him, all 3 of them have been very pointed. I do not kiss his butt in any way, just so that he would write back to me. And in fact, I have to say, in some ways, I think I've insulted him in some ways. And, he's tried to write, he's said a few things in the first couple of letters, and I write back to him. I'm like, get that out of my face. You're trying to pull that with me. And so I never know what kind of tone the next letter is going to have. And so what I do is I just go to the last page and see how the letter ends to kind of figure out what the rest of the letter is. Is this going to be like 3 pages of him, dropping F-bombs and everything on me, or is it something else? I will read you, at least tonight, how the letter ends. Okay, just so you know. He has like 7 different points. Well, this is point number 7. Thank you for communicating with me. I appreciate it. Steve Pankey signed it, page 3 of 3. That is how this letter ends. Even though it's 3 pages and obviously he has a lot to say. It's, of course, for me, it's easy for me. I get to type everything out and, print it on the computer. He, of course, has to write everything by hand. And so he's written 3 pages, and it's actually dated my mother's birthday, October 25th. So I will read this. I don't know if I'll read it tonight, because if I read it tonight, then I might never sleep. So maybe I will leave that to tomorrow to read that and then start working on the kind of response. I don't really know what he said yet. I don't know. But he thanked me for communicating with him, so I don't know what to tell you. We'll see what he has to say. But I got letter number 3, and it's the longest one yet. So maybe because the first letter was 2 pages. The second letter was like a page and a half or something like that. So this is easily the longest one yet. So maybe I'm starting to get him to open up a little bit more. And of course, as we know, Steve likes to talk. So we'll just have to see. Shree says, you need to write a book. Seriously. Well, I do know how to write, Sheree. I'll maybe have to think about that. The only thing, Sheree, and I want to put this right there on the record so everybody knows that I'm very well aware of this, that, there is an ethics question. A lot of victims' families don't like it when, reporters get involved and they want to write books and write about, some killer in jail and everything else. And, that is something that is certainly a concern of mine. The reason that if this information is new to anybody, you didn't know that I was writing to Steve Pankey or whatever else. The reason I've chosen to do this is because the truth is, despite what a jury decided in Colorado over a year ago, except for the prosecution, and I guess except for the jurors, and maybe except for Janelle's family, I'm not sure a lot of people are secure in the idea that Steve Pankey killed Janelle Matthews. Certainly could have. There's certainly nothing that rules him out. But on the other hand, there's certainly nothing that rules him in either, as the prosecution proved, because they could never put him on the street. So these are the kinds of things for me that compelled me to write him. It wasn't so I could just say that I'm writing to somebody who's in jail, who's a murderer. I could have done that. I have a former classmate from high school who's in jail in Pennsylvania for committing murder about 10 years ago. I don't know if he would ever written back to me. His name's Chris Patterson, if you ever want to look him up. But, if I wanted to do that, I could have written Chris, way back then. By the way, Chris surely did commit that murder. He murdered somebody over a tattoo bill or something, if you can believe it. It might have been over drugs too. But with Steve, the reason I chose to do this is because I'm still not sure he did it. And so I want to get into his mind to try to find out what he thinks about being convicted. And of course, he says that he's innocent. And there's nothing so far in the first two letters that anything that is damning toward him. Maybe I'll, being that he wrote 3 pages this time, maybe he'll say slip up or something. Maybe. But this is what compelled me to write him. I was involved. I got to know him. Hung jury first time, convicted the second time, but there's still a ton of questions. And that's why I chose to write him. Not because I'm planning to write a book. Not because I'm a true podcaster and I want to have it on my resume that I'm communicating with somebody in jail. It's nothing like that at all. It's all for information purposes and education. And who knows, in dealing with Steve, maybe it can help me understand disappearances in situations like this better. That's why I chose to do it. And of course, I still have a lot of questions about Janelle's disappearance, my insight as an observer. And what I'm trying to do is get Steve's insight into it, whether he murdered her or not, his insight into some of these. And so far, I would not say he's getting me a lot of insight. Maybe that changes in this letter. We'll just have to find out. Everything says he's not guilty. Charlie, you have the ability to be objective regardless of beliefs. You do it all the time. Thank you, Cherie. Lisa, I don't think Pancake did it, but if he did, I agree. There's not enough evidence. It's just an idea. I realize, Cherie. I get it. I get it. Steve and I, I'm the only person who has this kind of relationship with Steve. Because I'm the only one who took him up on being interviewed for a podcast in a true crime, the true crime world. I'm the only person who took him up on that. And then on top of that, doing an interview, although it was horribly recorded, the audio, every time I listen to it, it's like, man, that audio is really bad. To it be so important that people deemed it important enough that I got called to Colorado twice. I'm the only person on this earth that has that kind of connection to Steve. It's weird how we two are connected like that. So, because no other reporters, I don't think, got called to the stand. He did do some other interviews, so maybe one other one, but that was just like with somebody locally in Idaho or wherever he was living at the time. That person did not get called to the stand. There was nothing in that interview that anybody felt compelling at all. So I just felt like I needed to continue this. And it very well may be that he's guilty. And one of these days, before he dies, being that I've built this rapport with him, he might confess to me. Maybe. On the other hand, maybe this will go in a totally other direction. But I only did it because of my curiosity with the entire thing. Valerie, starting to think I'm psychic. Why did I ask that? And you got a letter. I know, Valerie. It's kind of weird, huh? Stop reading my mind, Valerie. Stop reading my mind, please. Sheree, what was the lotto numbers, Valerie? That's funny. Lisa, I love the way you did that interview. You asked tough questions. I want to remind everybody, Steve answered every question I asked. Now, we now know he lied quite a bit, but he did not evade any question that I asked him in that interview. It's always something that sticks out. All right, move on. Let's if you want to tune in next week, I'm not sure I will be able to read every word of this letter, but I'll surely be able to give you a generalization of it. If I can't read anything specifically, I will certainly give you a very honest, objective overall tone of it. Thank you, everything. I appreciate that. Let's talk about this. Little did I know that a disappearance that I watched on an episode of that show on Paramount Plus, Never Seen Again. Imagine somebody calling a show that. That's my tagline. Thank you. Little did I know that one of those episodes that I just watched a month ago would end up playing out and be resolved right here in the Tampa area where I live. Michael Samdass, Canadian. I'm going to read some of this to you. It's a very long article. I'm just going to read some of it. On a warm May evening, with daylight still left, a 30-year-old woman was out for a long walk on the streets of Hyde Park with its oak-shaped bungalows. This is Hyde Park, by the way. There's a Hyde Park area of Tampa. With its oak-shaded bungalows, swanky shops, and bustling bars and restaurants. She would later tell police she didn't think anything of it when she passed a homeless man. Then he chased her. The man grabbed her by her ponytail, slammed her to the ground, punched her in the face again and again. He laughed, according to police reports. Afterward, the man said something about God, a witness stated. A lawyer walking home with his family from dinner at a restaurant heard the woman's cries and ran to the scene. One of several people tried to help. He fired a shot from his handgun. He had a concealed weapons permit, but no one was wounded. The woman, later quoted in TV news reports, suffered a broken nose, a concussion, bruises, and abrasions. She has publicly been identified only by her first name, Taylor. The Tampa Bay Times is not including her full name because she is the victim of a violent crime. I never talked to him. I didn't provoke him. There was no reason. I've never seen a demon like I saw in that man. When police arrested a man on nearby Bayshore Boulevard and took him to jail, he gave the unlikely name of Ezja Beelzebub Nadopa. Beelzebub being a name for the devil. In fact, the man accused in the attack had a different name and a backstory from more than 1,000 miles away. Investigators would learn he was Michael Samdass, 44 years old, and he had vanished from Canada more than 3 years earlier. So any of you who have the Paramount Plus on your smart TVs, if you go to the show Never Seen Again, which is a disappearance show, although the episodes are only like 25 minutes long, this is one of the episodes. Michael Samdass, S-A-M-D-A-S-S. And he went missing from Canada over 3 years ago. And he was a guy who was into real estate. He comes from a very good family, very educated. And as I will read, he worked in real estate. He had a close family. He was the kind of person who took care to make sure his socks matched his tie, an image that bore very little resemblance to the matted hair inmate with the penetrating eyes in his jail mugshot. Of course, it's your brother, his oldest sister, Risha Das, said about his mugshot. It was just not a version of him I expected to see. Like Jekyll and Hyde, Michael Samdass was the middle child of 5 tight-knit siblings in a family that immigrated decades earlier from Guyana to Hamilton, Ontario. I know where that is. I go by that all the time when I've gone to Canada fishing. The family started out poor, she said, but built a comfortable life. Her brothers played sports and went to art school for a time. As a teenager, he got in trouble for robbing a convenience store to pay for photo day at school. As an adult, he worked in a real estate business, renovating and flipping houses. Family photos show Samdass with neat hair and bookish glasses. He's playing with toddlers, dancing at a wedding. Friends and family called him outgoing. Several years ago, though, they started to notice changes. He stopped returning calls, stopped going out, stopped caring about how he looked. He slept a lot. He began talking to himself like he was talking to the clouds. It was like Jekyll and Hyde, friend Mara Casagrande said in a TV show about his disappearance, that TV show being never seen again. Samdass began having outbursts, including a violent one against their father in 2017. His neighbors nicknamed him Rant, R-A-N-T, and said they sometimes heard him yelling. He was charged with disrupting the peace after an altercation with a bank teller. He was also involved in a confrontation with a homeless person. In 2017, family members tried to get him detained for psychological evaluation and treatment under the country's Mental Health Act. Every time he got a test there, they said he was perfectly fine. 4 times they released him. He vanished on September 5th, 2019. He left behind his cell phone, laptop, and car. His bank account showed no activity. The police investigation stretched on 4 months, then years. The family offered $25,000 reward for information. Missing persons organizations got involved. There were posters and searches of shelters in city streets. And as it says, 2 years in, Paramount Plus aired an episode about Samdass in a series called Never Seen Again. But for more than 3 years, nothing until a violent attack far away. Dass said a missing persons group using a facial recognition program got a hit on a jail mugshot in Florida. Fingerprints from an inmate at the Hillsborough County Jail calling him Nadopa were a match. In Canada, 2 officers came to the family's door. He's alive, they said. It's terrible what happened. Dass said of the assault and the victim, terrible. I hate to know more. I hate to know what she's going through. So if you've heard about the disappearance of Michael Samdass in Canada, he was eventually identified as this homeless man who assaulted this woman this year here in Florida. Now, how did he get from Canada to Florida? I don't think anybody knows that. I don't know if they were, I don't know what kind of treatment he's going to get. Is it possible to put him on some kind of medication to kind of even his mental illness out? I don't know. But somehow he was able to get from Canada in the United States. And of course, I guess if you really want to, it's not very difficult to get into the United States from Canada. You have to remember that Canada and the United States share a very, very long border, much longer than we share with Mexico. And a lot of it is not monitored at all. I know, at least in the United States, we hear so much about the southern border. But the northern border of the United States with Canada, there's no fences and barbed wire out there. Yes, if you go through the official places, I guess you'd like in Buffalo, you go across the Peace Bridge, which is actually very near Hamilton, Ontario. And I've been across the Peace Bridge many, 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 many times. It's a fascinating area, by the way. It's right there by Niagara Falls. Of course, if you're in a car and you're going there, you got to have your passport to get in. And when you're coming back from Canada, if you're an American citizen, you have to explain why you were in Canada. You have to have your passport again and all of that. But of course, there are a lot of ways to get from Canada in the United States without doing all of that. So did he hitch a ride? Did he walk? I doubt he walked from Hamilton, Ontario to Tampa, Florida. So who gave him a ride if he was really in this kind of condition with this mental illness and acting like he was acting? who would really want to be in a car or truck or 18-wheeler with him anyway? I don't know. Did he jump on a train? I don't know. I'm hoping that we actually do find some of these things out. It would be very interesting to me. But never could I have suspected. It seems that by the time that I was watching the episode, that this assault and everything had already happened, but it was only recently that he got identified. Now, I will tell you that when I watched that Never Seen Again episode, of course, I never could have predicted he would be found in the United States. Who could predict that? But certainly I was open to the idea that he wasn't dead. There was nothing of a foul play nature that was going on with him. Even though he had this mental illness, there was no allegations that he was involved in any criminal activity. There's no allegations that he was into drugs or anything else. This was just a good old-fashioned, unfortunate, of course, mental illness. And so that got me thinking, well, he's in Hamilton, Ontario, Toronto, Ontario, the largest city in Canada. In fact, Toronto as a city is large even by United States standards. It's a huge city. I'm thinking probably homeless. I guess I got that right. Little did I know that the city would be Tampa, not Toronto or Toronto. So that is, if you've known about this disappearance, it seems like his disappearance did get a lot of attention simply because his family, was really out there, really publicizing his disappearance. I think it was also got a lot of attention because, you have to remember, he's 44 years old. So it seems like this mental illness did not really start to, affect him until in his 30s, which is fairly rare. If people are going to show signs of mental illness, usually starts up popping up teen years into early 20s. Of course, unless you start doing stuff. And if you start putting chemicals in your body that shouldn't be going in there, then anything's possible. But I don't think that was the situation here. I really think this was some sort of late blooming kind of mental illness that started affecting him in his 30s. And so I was certainly open to the idea that he was homeless, but I'm not sure if he really didn't remember in watching the episode. I didn't remember that he was that old, that he was 44. But here's what I also know. It was only facial recognition that could have been, and everything's even saying this in the post or in the comment in the chat right now, that if you were to see a picture of him in Canada when he was taking care of himself, and if you were to see the picture of them, what they have of him here now in Florida, you would never think that was the same guy. And this is one of those reasons why, I know once again, I realize this will be a very, very controversial statement, but this is why flyers don't work. I know that's what a lot of families do. And then we always have these talks. They put the flyers up, they get them ripped down, and everybody goes to Kookville regarding, it's some conspiracy. I don't think that, but this is one of the reasons that flyers usually don't work. 99.9% of the time, flyers don't work because a lot of these people, if they have gone off, if they run off by their own, here's what I know. For guys, they're probably not still shaving and doing upkeep. And if it's a woman, if you're homeless, what are you doing? You can't do your hair and everything. It's not going to be too long before neither missing men or missing women are going to look very much like they did in their everyday lives before they went missing. This is I realize that this is controversial, and I realize families put those flyers out there because they want to feel like they're doing something. But how often do flyers solve disappearances? Not very often. This is why. And of course, I've talked about dogs the same way. Dogs, for the most part, don't solve disappearances as much as they're used. So, Rockford, I bet the number of unfound cases where a person is still alive and homeless, while not high, as close to say 10%, would surprise us. I bet we could agree on some likely candidates. Rockford, I'm glad you, because I do have that in my notes here. I'm going to get to that in a moment. Thank you for bringing that up, though. Very, very nicely done. Everything. He looks a lot different. Yes, everything looks all scruffy, right? He has dreadlocks, right? He doesn't look anything like the pictures that were provided of him when he went missing in Canada. You just would never, at least to the human eye, you would never put them together. Whereas I guess facial recognition, of course, it creeps us all out. I guess it's working better than the human eye now. I guess, when does Skynet, become sentient or whatever that line was from the Terminator movies, I guess. But going back to something that Rockford brought up that I had in my notes here, what does this mean to us? Could some of Unfound's people be homeless? Of course, the answer is yes. All right, absolutely. When we get to 307, 308, 309 disappearances that we've covered so far, of course, the answer is going to be yes about the possibility. But I think the number is still very, very low. Now, it very well may be, of course, we have had some disappearances recently where people were alive. Brandon Roberts, Alan Glasgow. And although in Alan's case, I don't think he's homeless. I think Brandon Roberts was homeless. So to your point, Rockford, I guess that kind of does show yes, it exists, but I still think that the number is very, very low. And I think what we have to throw in there, at least something to remember, is that if we really want to draw, an apples to apples comparison, we have to think about how Michael was not into drugs. The reason he was acting this way was not because of drugs. It was because just a straight mental illness. And when it comes to that, Rockford, and I really have not had the time to go back through every disappearance that Unfound is featured. But I don't know how many disappearances we've covered where the person had a mental illness and didn't also have some kind of addiction. I think that's very rare. Now, one that comes to mind is Renee Lamanna. She was a young woman who had a mental illness and had had one for a long time, but did not have any other, did not have any self-destructive behavior, no addictions or anything like that. However, I will tell you that I don't believe that she ended up being homeless. I still believe that she ran off and died somewhere out there in the Atlantic Ocean City, New Jersey area, and she just hasn't been found almost 30 years later, despite people saying that they did see her. And if you don't know that disappearance, I think that disappearance was very early on in Unfound's existence, maybe 2017. And I think she went missing in 1994. So but I guess that falls into the same category as Michael Samdass. But I'm just not sure how many disappearances we've covered where it was just straight mental illness. Because we have to remember, mental illness isn't necessarily going to kill you. A drug addiction is going to kill you. Of course, cocaine, heroin, whatever, of course, if you're sharing needles, then if it's not the drug, it's going to be an infection or whatever else. Whereas mental illness, I think what we've seen is that people with mental illness can still figure out some way to survive on the streets. They figure out ways, even though many of them can be very violent and they can become criminals and everything, but they still know how to feed themselves and they know they need water and all these things. They just happen to look at the world in a way that doesn't go along with reality. I'm not sure how many disappearances we've covered like that. Maybe, Kathy tends to be the Unfound historian. Kathy, I'm not trying to give you work or anything, but maybe if you wanted to go down through and think about that. But just the one off the top of my head, Renee Lamont. And now this is in contrast to maybe some disappearances that we had where we think people really did run off. They didn't have a mental illness. They didn't have any addiction, but they just didn't like their life the way it was, and they took off. Now, we know that happened with Patrick Reed. We know that happened with Alan Glasgow. But still, that would then be in a little separate category from Michael Samdass, because we just don't know what was in Michael Samdass's head. Why did he choose to come to the United States? Why did he choose to come to the Tampa area? I don't think he knew anybody here or anything. I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows. And it may be that he can never explain it. I just have to know a little bit more about how he's being treated. And maybe there is a certain concoction of medications that can get him to a point where he can explain what's going on the last so many years since he's been missing and how he got from Canada to Tampa and everything else. Hopefully. I don't know if we'll ever know those answers, though. Yeah, weird, interesting story. That poor lady, scary. Yeah, she's lucky she didn't get killed. Rockford, Flyers also can throw a case off track for reasons ranging from well-meaning people who make honest mistakes to tempting people who want to insert themselves. Both can lead to a lot of wasted time. Absolutely. Absolutely. But for me, I always look, I keep saying, I'm for what works. I'm not for what doesn't work. And this is why I say dogs don't work. Flyers don't work, even though those are things that are very popular when it comes to the investigations of disappearances. They don't work. Rewards don't work. I'm for what works. I'm not for what doesn't work. Jackson Miller, that's another good one, Rockford. Can't really put Cameron Remmer in there because it very well could be that Cameron was sampling his own product. But Jackson Miller could be one. Sure, from the San Francisco area. That's a very good possibility. Kathy Rockford, I think Jackson harmed himself. I personally think very few of Unfound's disappearances that the person is still alive. Okay, Kathy. So this one really hit home hard to me because it's the Tampa area. And what's really weird about it, although I don't go over to Tampa very often, but where this all happened, I'm fairly familiar with this area. I've been to that area a couple times in the last few years. It very well could be that I drove right past him. Of course, I didn't know who he was. See, these are the kinds of things that can creep you out when a disappearance gets solved very close to where you live, and you start thinking, well, did I encounter that person at one time? Did I pass that person? So that is the disappearance of Michael Samdass. I'm certainly happy for his family that he's been found, that he's alive. I certainly hope that he can get treatment. But on the other hand, I also hope that he's put in jail as long as it takes for whatever the penalty would be for him assaulting this woman. And I'm hoping that they will only let him out of a facility if they are sure that he can manage this mental illness, because we know this isn't something that cures itself. We know that if Michael is going to be on this earth for, he's 44, let's just say another 30 years, he's going to need medication. And can he be responsible enough to take it for himself? I think that that's a big question mark. And I think we know the reason we have a homeless population in the United States and a lot of these people have mental illness is because these people have not been capable or not able to continue to take their medication on their own. In fact, a lot of them talk themselves out of it. Well, I'm fine now. I don't need to take it. Twinkle Kathy, what about the episode not too long ago? The young mom was last said to be seen getting beat up by two guys. He was the one that was given a free food at a restaurant. Yeah, I agree. It's just a few. Rock for Kathy. Twinkle, not ringing a bell. Let me think about what case that is. Oh, look, too. They took him behind a building. Had a friend up the hill, I think. That's not ringing a bell to me, Twinkle. Okay. So that is the disappearance and discovery of Michael Samdass. So let me now get to Madison Scott. We talked about this early on, and I said I would get to it. Sorry, other things to cover tonight. If you don't know, this is a disappearance that went unsolved for a long time. Madison Scott went out to a nature area out there in the Vanderhoof area of Canada, and she went missing, and her truck was still there, her tent was still there, and she went missing for a long time. A lot of different theories out there. Did she get into a vehicle with somebody and get abducted? Did she choose to disappear? Was she suicidal? Did she just walk off into the woods on her own and kill herself? But then in May, her remains were found on private property in the Vanderhoof area. And it's really not possible that she walked. I'm still not saying it's impossible. Certainly somebody who was physically able could have walked it, but nobody really believes Madison did that. She was found on private property in the Vanderhoof area in May. And I've done my best to try to figure out if there have been any developments since May. And the answer is no, at least nothing publicly. Nobody's been charged with anything. If you look out there, you can find the name of the owners of the property, and I'm not going to say what the name is. But it is curious. So May would have been the 5th month. So it's been like over 5 months, and we haven't heard anything, despite it being that I think that her remains were buried on that property. The problem we have, at least, in doing as best research that I could for tonight for this live show, is that, were these people who own this property out there where she was that night? I don't know. I've tried to find that out. A lot of rumors that they were, but I haven't seen anything factual. So how is it? Did her family know these people in the Vanderhoof area? Did this family have some son or daughter around Madison's age? Did she get it? Nobody seems to know anything. And so you would, let's just put it this way. The remains were found on somebody's property. The remains were buried, I believe. So somebody was trying to hide something, and 5 months later, nobody's been charged with anything. So what could the reasons be? What could be the reasons? Well, one, maybe they haven't been able to determine a cause of death, and I even have in parentheses Tom Brown. Now, of course, Tom Brown's remains, the ones that were found, were not buried. They were right there just laying on the ground as Pine Gregory found them. But it could be that despite her remains being there and maybe being buried, that there is no signs of death, unlike going back to Steve Pankey, Janelle Matthews, her remains were also buried. But when she was exhumed, when she was found, and she was found with a bullet hole in her head. So there was a cause of death. What could some other reasons be? It could be no proof these people met Madison that night. No proof these people knew Madison at all. So then we have to start thinking, is somebody trying to set them up? There's no proof that the people who own that property, who live on that property, were at this party that was being held where Madison was that night. So we just don't know a lot. And what's weird to me, even if you go to some place like Web Sleuths, which, they have moderators there, but, you can get, I wouldn't say a lot of people go to Kookville, but you do usually get a little kind of feeling at Web Sleuths like the, sometimes locals will get, say, well, here's what the local hubbub, here's what I'm hearing through the grapevine. You can see that on quite a few different threads and forums on Web Sleuths, and there is nothing like that And I took the time from May in the thread concerning Madison Scott. I took the time to go through pretty well, maybe 75%, go through the thread from May till now regarding Madison's disappearance and death. And there's really nobody really saying much of anything. There's nobody that's gone on there and said, you know what? I was at that party last night. I was there that night, although I didn't know Madison, but I was there. And you know what? Those people were there. There's nothing like that. So that is, that's interesting to me, because usually in situations like this is what you get, because people, as we all know, people love talking about this stuff. You know, people unfortunately love being connected to stuff. Now, of course, if they have something relevant to add, like I saw Madison get in a truck or a car or something, then of course we want those people to come forward. But we know a lot of people will come forward who don't know anything, but will still want to talk about it because they're from the area and everything else. And you just don't see that on Web Sleuths. And as you know, I don't go to Reddit, because that's not moderated. People can say anything there. So in addition to all this, here are some other, and these are once again questions that I haven't seen answered yet. If you have any answers to any of these things, please put them in the comment section here. But we don't know what led to that property in the first place. Being that it was private property, it wasn't like some sort of, like we have National Park in the United States and people are just, you know, walking through and stumble upon remains. That most likely did not happen with Madison Scott. That somebody, you know, John Smith, you know, is on Jane Doe's property and John Smith just happens to come across Madison Scott's remains. I'm doubting that happened. I'm doubting it. So what led to that property in the first place? In addition, why was the warrant served? How did they get permission to go on there and then dig her all up? None of this is known, and I've looked. I realize there are some people who are real heavy experts on Madison Scott's disappearance and everything that's gone on and have been following this, especially since May. If you are hearing my voice or you're watching tonight, please, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. I would like somebody to try to answer these questions for me. I'm just definitely curious about this. What led them to that property? Who are these people? Do they have a connection to Madison Scott? Do they have a connection to the party that was being held where Madison Scott was that night? Why was this warrant served? Was she buried? Is there a cause of death? If anybody knows and can offer, if you're going to email me, you're going to have to back it up. I'm just not going to take you at your word. You're going to have to give me some sort of reason that you know this stuff, that I can look into your background and everything else. But please, Unfound Podcast at gmail.com. Light says, no, please do not, Light, please do not say the names of the owners in here. Please do not do that. Because we don't know if they were involved or not, and I'm not here to cause problems for them. If people want to find it, they can go out and find it themselves. I just don't want it coming back to me. Thinking of Seamus Twinkle Joe Ackridge. I don't think he's alive. Twinkle, Seaman, I don't know some of this conversation. Charlie, I'm thinking of Seamus Gray. I've heard the name. That's about it. Rockford. Regarding Madison Scott, could it be that they don't know which person living at or had access to the property to charge? It doesn't have to be a conspiracy, and there could be multiple viable candidates. It very well could be, Rockford. But what I'm thinking here is it's been 5 months. It's a very high-profile case. And, it's been one that's had a documentary made out about it and everything. And you think they'd be very motivated to get to the bottom of this. And here we are 5 months later. Maybe they don't have anything. I don't know. Of course, we look at maybe like Janelle Matthews. Janelle Matthews was missing for 35 years. Her remains are found. And like less than 3 weeks later, Steve Pankey's getting all sorts of, warrants served on him and subpoenas and everything else. Now, of course, he wasn't charged until over a year later. But when that happened in 2019, it was all over the news and everybody knew everything that was being done. With Madison Scott, it seems like it's the opposite. And so I'm wondering why. Karen, thanks for the show. I'm going now to watch the Melbourne Cup. It's a horse race. Bye. Oh, you're ditching the live show for a horse race, Karen? Okay, I like horse racing too. All right. Hazel, Ed Webb Sluice is moderator enough to ban me last week. Well, what did you do, Hazel? They do have moderating. I mean, they do. And I didn't know you could get banned there. But Hazel, what did you do? Maybe the rest of us would like to hear. What case are you talking about? I'm talking about Madison Scott, Facebook user, whoever you are, Facebook user. I'm talking about Madison Scott, a young woman who went missing near Vanderhoof in Canada. Very, very probably one of the, maybe the most well-known disappearance of just your common person in Canada. Her family has done a lot of media, although I have to admit that I did talk to her mother some years ago, and she did not want to be on Unfound. And dare I say, from my point of view, the conversation wasn't even very pleasant. Not that I'm just telling you the truth, but that's what I'm talking about. So I just have all these questions about this. It just seems like it's gone a little differently than when Janelle Matthews' remains were found, especially since it was so high profile. Kathy, Twinkle, there's only one in 2023 that might fit what you're saying. I typed it a while ago. He was a 53-year-old guy living with sister. Rockford says, maybe the Canadians are lining up one of their infamous Mr. Big traps. I don't even know what that means, Rockford, but maybe you can explain a little bit more. So we just don't know a lot. All we know is the remains were found on this property back in May, and since then, nothing. Nothing. I'm guessing somebody is doing something somewhere, but we don't even know how her remains were even found on that property. Was this some sort of tipster line or something? We don't know. And I have to admit, given that it was so high profile and they find her remains and it's on private property, that usually lines up to the idea, well, somebody's going to get charged with something sometime. Not yet. So maybe the wheels of justice in Canada turn even more slowly than they do in the United States. But it was just something that popped in my mind. There's really nothing there's nothing going on. It just kind of popped into my mind within the last couple of days that, oh yeah, what's going on with that? And the answer is nothing. And so that's what I'm passing on to all of you. Rockford, you have to look it up. It's an entrapment device they used that is illegal in the United States. Mr. Big Traps. They're doing that stuff. Okay, I'll have to look it up. Everybody, you can now look up what Rockford's talking about. The Mr. Big Trap that they use in Canada. Okay, everybody can look that up. What else do I want to talk about? Oh, yeah, I want to talk about this. And you heard me talk about a couple weeks ago that John Fitzpatrick was found. His remains were found. This is the guy who was with Fang Jin. This is the most recent episode of Unfound Now. Well, unfortunately, her remains have been found now as well. There are new developments in a missing persons case involving a former Navy SEAL and a Chinese tourist. More human remains were found in the Anza Borrego Desert over the weekend. The remains found on Saturday are believed to be those of missing Chinese tourist Fang Jin, 47 years old, according to an attorney associated with the case who spoke to a private investigator hired by Jin's family. The remains are believed to be those of ex-Navy SEAL John Patrick, 52 years old. were found by a camper on September 17th in Harper Canyon. All indications are that they found remains on Saturday. At the request of San Diego Sheriff's investigators, Fitzpatrick's autopsy has been sealed. The San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office has not positively identified either set of remains, though the families of both Fitzpatrick and Jin have been notified of the discoveries. The missing persons cases of Fang Jin and John Fitzpatrick are still active, and there's no update at this time. Our department has learned from the San Diego County Sheriff's Department that human remains were located over the weekend in Anza Borrego area. The San Diego County Sheriff's Department did not respond to a CBS 8 request for comment regarding the discovery of the remains. High temperatures in the Anza Borrego during the week of July 22nd, when the couple went missing, ranged from 106 to 117 degrees Fahrenheit. Shortly thereafter, Fitzpatrick's four-wheel Toyota Tacoma was found damaged and abandoned in the area south of the Harper Flat. The date the truck was discovered has not been released. Attorney Schmidt got word of the discovery over the weekend. You have a 47-year-old woman with two beautiful daughters, one in college. The young girl is something like 7 years old, and all of a sudden they don't have a mother, and so it hits you that it's a tragedy. Jin flew to California on July 14th from her home in China to meet up with Fitzpatrick, who lived in Morongo Valley. Covered a disappearance there, by the way. She came here for romantic purposes, had been texting him for something like 6 months prior to coming here. And they definitely had rapport. And her expectation was that he was going to show her around the area, Morongo Valley, Morongo Basin, Joshua Tree State Park, and see whether their relationship developed. Fitzpatrick's truck remains abandoned in the desert, according to a law enforcement source who said it's going to take a helicopter to get it out. So even to this day, his truck is still out in that desert. I guess people go out there and see it if they wanted. Editor's update on November 2nd, 2023. The San Diego County Sheriff's Department responded to a CBS Public Records request by stating the truck was located on September 4th. So here we are 2 months later. The truck is still out there. In addition, I can confirm remains were found in Anza Borrego Park. The remains were located in the general vicinity of Mr. Fitzpatrick. So Jin Fang's remains and John Fitzpatrick's remains were found near each other, although in the same area, I guess not beside each other. The remains have not been positively identified by the medical examiner's office at this time. I cannot confirm whether our office will be doing a press release at this time, as we have not received information which may lead us to conducting one. Hazel So is helping the family friends of Fang Jin, as she had no one in the States to find info. Long story short, I sent emails to the family of the guy missing with her. I was put on 3-day timeout for getting involved. Hazel then banned because I admitted I continue to help family research, even after mods had stated Web Sleuth members must not get involved. Hazel, I don't know if that's exactly what they say there. I think that having had the owner of Web Sleuth on Unfound earlier this year, she certainly wants people to get involved. What they want to avoid is calling out people and using people's names and things like that. And maybe some other things. I don't know all their rules there, but certainly the owner of Web Sleuth certainly wants people to get involved. So, and Hazel says, I actually have an inside update. I guess you could put it here, and we'll see what I think about it, Hazel. If you want to type it here, you can. I am the moderator. Of course, Shree is the moderator, and she and I will take a look at that, and whatever you have to write, we'll decide if we can keep it in there or not. So if you want to give an inside update, you can, but I can't guarantee once we read it, you know, if it's too salacious or something, then I will have to delete it, but that's totally up to you. Anything else? Did that, talked about him, talked about Madison Scott. So, oh yes. One more thing very quickly. If you didn't know, part of the manifesto was released from the shooter who shot up, killed 3 people at the Nashville Covenant shooting, remember, for some months ago. You remember that? Probably most people remember it because they actually have badge cam of the police going in and eventually shooting the killer. Well, part of the manifesto has finally been released. There's been a lot of politics and everything around this, which I'm going to avoid. But I happen to believe this is at least part of the manifesto. I don't believe this is some scam or, hoax or anything like that. I don't know why it got released now. It very well may be that somebody released it illegally or something surreptitiously, and they weren't supposed to. It's certainly possible. But the only part I want to talk about regarding it is that something we have to remember, and this goes back to, of course, the shooting in Lewiston, Maine a few weeks ago. The people who do these massacres know they're going to die. Just like going back to the Las Vegas shooting, the largest massacre outside of a terrorist attack in the United States, that guy knew going in that he was going to die. Certainly, the guy who committed the Lewiston, Maine, he knew massacres, 2 different locations. He knew he was going to die. And even this killer, whose name I'm not going to mention, in the Nashville Covenant shooting, in the manifesto that this killer wrote, also knew that death would be the ultimate price for this. In fact, the killer stated that the prediction was there would be like 3 to 7 minutes to kill as many people as possible, maybe 10 minutes at the most. And so what we have to realize is that these people do have death wishes, and because they have that, there's really no way to stop them. There's no fear there of getting caught or anything because their plan is to die anyway. And there isn't any sort of laws regarding anything, regarding mental illness or guns or anything else that can stop these people. Once somebody decides, I want to die, and I want to die in the process of killing other people, that's it. They will find a way to do it. That's just the way it is. And all we can do, at least here in the United States, is create fewer areas where people are undefended. It is, now in Maine, they are allowed to carry guns there. So why somebody didn't do something, I don't know. But certainly in schools where, of course, guns aren't allowed, these are areas where people are undefended. So, and it's very sad. But this is what talking about last week or the week before, keeping your heads on swivels. We have to understand the nature of these people, and they want to die. This is not something like people going in, shooting up a 7-Eleven, killing a clerk, and getting away. Those people want to get away. The people that do these kinds of massacres and stay on property and shoot up as many people, they know they're going to die. They know it. Rockford, if you live in Southern California, any Morongo makes you think of cheesy casino ads and advertisements for things like a 2-month John Lovitz residency. Yeah, Morongo Valley. Yes, right. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that just to remind you all of the mentality of people who do things like that. This Friday, I'm going to make public a recording that I did a few months ago for all Patreon and YouTube supporters. And this Friday will be all disappearances on Unfound that have been somewhat resolved. You might remember about a month ago, I had a special episode that came out on a Monday, and that was all the Unfound Nows disappearances that have been resolved. Remember I did that? Well, this Friday, I'm going to go, and it's like I said, I did this recording a couple months ago. I go through all of the disappearances that we've covered on Unfound to this point that have been somewhat resolved. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Andrea Bowman and Zoe Campos and Austin Pivo and Devin Bond. And the only one I'm going to have to add to that is Dennis J. Lushbaugh, because that's one that got resolved within the last couple weeks. I'm going to add that in there. But that will be this Friday. You're going to, if you've ever wondered how many of these disappearances that Unfound has covered have been somewhat resolved, and how many are murders and suicides and walk-offs and whatever else, who are these people? I put the list together for you because I care about all of you, and I made a recording of it, and that will be this Friday's episode. I'll have a little bit more. I'll have a little analysis and everything to go along with it, of course, after that part plays. But that's what you will hear this Friday. If you've ever been wondering what Unfound disappearances have been somewhat resolved, of course, I get to determine what resolved means. You're going to find out this Friday. I think that there's a total of 29 of them. So that will be this Friday. The bowling alley was a gun-free zone due to their liquor license. Thank you, Charlie. Thanks for amazing show. Ed, you're very welcome. Thank you. I try to work hard. Thank you. And Hazel's getting out as well. Hazel, you're not going to tell us what the inside info is then? That's fine. It's up to you. But yeah, I'm done too, everyone. Remember, if you want to contact me, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. And I'm going to be doing some interviews this week. So I think we're going to be covering disappearances for the rest, every Friday for the rest of the year. But this week, like I said, Friday, a resolved episode for all of the Unfound podcast disappearances. That's all I got. Hope you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up. Patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. PayPal.me/Unfound Podcast. Thank you all for all the comments, questions, and everything else. Stay safe out there. Keep your heads on swivels. Charlie, say hello to the boys for me. Good night.